Y'all, Joshua has officially graduated. In part one, we talked about a few of the things that he learned the last couple years of schooling and unschooling is what we did the last 2 years. And then last Tuesday, we graduated him. He fulfilled all the requirements necessary. Yeah, everything that we needed for our state requirements in Colorado. And we were able to do a private ceremony for him, which we will talk about in a little bit.
Hello, and welcome to School to Homeschool. I am Janae Daniels. I'm a wife, a mother of 6, and a former middle school teacher turned homeschool mom. I have kids in their 20s all the way down to elementary age and everything in between. Are you thinking about pulling your kids from the school system like I did, but you're scared to death and don't know what to do next? My friends, I felt the same way, and you have come to the right place. I want to help your family leave the system so that you can take the hearts and minds of your children back.
Joshua, welcome back.
Why, thank you.
So let's talk a little bit. So for those of you who are new to this podcast, Joshua is my child number 3, but my first homeschooling graduate. My older 2 sons graduated from public school, one from a charter school, one from a public school. I mean, technically, they're both public schools. But Joshua was my first homeschooling graduate. When we pulled Joshua, he was going into 8th grade. And during COVID. And so he never officially went to high school other than going a couple days with friends.
Yeah, and that's a story for another day. But I've gone to school for like 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, and those are stories for other days. Because anyway, but in part 1, we talked a little about what he learned about relationships with friendships, and he was starting to talk a little bit about what he learned as far as in his studies, especially those last 2 years. So I want to continue with that, and then we'll share what we did for his graduation. I've also got a link that I'll put to an Instagram reel. And I'm working on editing the video and getting it all pieced together so that people can see a full video of his actual graduation. It was exactly 18 minutes long, and it was actually really delightful and fun. And 18 minutes was still, in my opinion, a little too long. I would have condensed it even more, but that's for next year with Katie. But with that, Joshua, let's go back, because when we ended off, we were talking about your friendships and relationships, but I want to go back and talk about some of the books. We've gotten lots of questions about the books that you read and what we would do with those books after you read them. So let's jump in there.
Yeah.
Of the books, I want you to talk about the books that meant the most to you. And I need to preface that we chose books based on his long-term interest of personal development.
What I want to do with my life.
Right, what he wants to do with his life, which is something with personal development, something, whether it's with Andrew Bustamante or Tony Robbins or Dean Graziosi, like
personal speaking, or not public speaking, not personal, or like working with people one-on-one or doing business development. So we'll see what happens, but
yeah. So we chose his books based on that interest. We chose business books, personal development books, and then we had sprinkled in there some things like economics and books that would build character. Say that again, Josh.
Moral dilemma books.
Moral dilemma books. So let's jump in, Josh. Book that comes top of mind.
The first book I read, the most impactful book of my life, probably, that in like terms of other people have been impacted, How to Win Friends and Influence People. First book I read.
And that's by Dale Carnegie.
Dale Carnegie. And so I think you had asked about like what we did with the books after I read them. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so talk about what it meant to you, and then what we would do with the books. Because I actually didn't have him write papers. He'd already.
So this is what we did with the books. I would read the book or listen to the book. I listen to probably 2/3 of them because it's just easier for me to do audiobooks, especially when I'm like working or doing any of the various things. Is it better for me to look at the camera, by the way, or just look at the screen?
Look at the camera.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry,
So,
friends.
Essentially, for like, I'll just give a synopsis of like the first book because a lot of the books are very similar, and there's a few like outliers that I want to talk about, like with To Kill a Mockingbird, and maybe a little bit with Meditations. But with How to Win Friends and Influence People, I read the book. Sorry about that. So with How to Win Friends and Influence People, I read the book and I really thought about the concepts, and then I did everything in my power to implement as many of them as I could. And so I learned how to have conversation and be a conversationalist. I really, like I said with like my friend Smith, I learned how to listen, but that was at the same time I was reading the book, and so it was very helpful to understand what it means to be genuinely interested in somebody, which is still something I'm trying to figure out. But for me, there's two things that I learned that that are taught in the book that help me specifically and kind of define who I am. And it's always have a smile, because a smile kind of determines your mood anyways, like subconsciously, and remember people's names. And people know that I remember people's names. And if I don't, I always ask and I always try to remember. And so it's something that is a pleasant surprise for people. And so in terms of like, what did I do with the book after, like, did I write a paper or did I go give a presentation? No, I implement it in my life because that's the entire point of the book. Like as parents, I'm sure a lot of people that are watching this are not kids. You don't go read a book and write a paper on it. That's just like, why? You read a book because you want to improve. And so because of the way my mom structured it, especially with like How to Win Friends and Influence People being the first book and one of the most influential, I read the books to change the way I perceive the world and how I acted. And that was the purpose of reading these books. And so we can move on to some other books. But with How to Win Friends and Influence People, I understood the value of letting it impact my life, because that is the value. Like, the value of a book is not the report that you write, but how it changes you. And that book probably single-handedly changed how I acted, and further how people perceive me as like more outgoing or more understanding or a better listener. So,
Well, and I'm going to interject here for a second because I recently saw a YouTuber, homeschooling mom, who was like, if you don't test your kids, then how are you ever going to know that they learned something? And I'm like, and I was really pretty put off because, again, she's never been a teacher, so she's never been in the classroom and doesn't know. Like, I was in the classroom, and I know that just because we tested kids doesn't mean that they learned anything. They might have memorized something. But in Joshua's case, like, having a simple conversation with some deep questions and juicy questions and hearing his insights helped me to see what he learned far more than if I had him write a paper. Now, if you have to still finish some English credits, yeah, have him write papers. That's fine.
That's a little bit different, but I want to actually point on that because I totally forgot. In terms of reading the books, rather than, I was personally excited because they were in my wheelhouse anyways, and even if they're not, I feel like certain books are just make you think, and so if you like have your kids read them and they actually try to read them or listen to them, that it can impact them. But to me, I was so excited about the concepts and things I was learning, even in like my economics book. For me, like, I really care about my mom, and like I do have a lot of friends, and there's different people I talk to for different things. But in terms of like how my life is changing, my mom is important to my life, and so I want to share those things with her. And so it was like it's not like it was a subconscious thing to have conversations with my mom and have deep, juicy conversations. Because I wanted to, not because I was forced to, which I think is a distinction to be made. Just because of how we live our lives, and my mom's a busy person, and I've got 3 younger siblings that have a lot more stuff that they need to do with her directly to get done. But in terms of like I would have conversations and work through different subjects and ideas, specifically with more tactile. So I actually want to talk about a book. It's called Economics in One Lesson, and it basically describes the like biggest fallacy in economics, which is, I'm just like do a super quick synopsis. it's to look at all the long-term effects of economic policy and every single group that it impacts. And it kind of ties to like subsidies, tariffs, minimum wage, price ceilings, so like actual economics. And so what would happen is, to me, this is very interesting, and I love business, and a lot of my friends love economics. Like I think one of my friends wants to go work for the Federal Reserve, and so we talk about economics a lot. And so in having like conversations with my mom, I'd be like, oh my goodness, this makes so much sense. Like, this policy is so stupid. Like, why would people do that? And then I'd explain why. And my mom's like just listening. She's like, oh, this whole homeschool thing works. And so it's like, even though some things would like go over her head, the idea of like having a conversation, because I was genuinely interested in the books I was reading when I was reading them, I think is what made me excited, and that's where the actual learning happens, is in the change in my behavior. And that's just like really quick. That's a quote from Alex Hormozy, that you can know that you learned something when your behavior changes. And so after every single book I read, my mom was able to see that my behavior changed. Like with Atomic Habits, that's the type of book you go back to over and over.
Yeah, I read that book I think 3 times.
Yeah, like with Atomic Habits specifically, like I was able to implement certain things in my life to help, and it like helped me understand concepts and the way the world operates. But in terms of like tactile things, economics 1 lesson helped me understand like how the world is built economically, how to win friends and influence people, helped me understand how to create relationships and how to be genuinely interested in other people. There's a few other books. One of the big ones for me was To Kill a Mockingbird, because I feel like it emphasizes the value of a soul. And to me, I was able to understand, like, because we live in a very like culturally not diverse place, and so if you can read between the lines of what I'm saying, I read To Kill a Mockingbird, and we live in a not culturally diverse place, and so getting to see the perspective from Atticus's side, like Atticus is the coolest dude to me, and like I want to be more like Atticus, but it explains and shows like the value of a human soul and the way that people perceive it. And to me, that's fascinating. And so that book made me cry. Like, while I was like doing dishes at like a restaurant, because I work at a restaurant, and I was just like crying, and people were walking in, I'm like bawling. But
Yeah, he called me on his break, crying. He's like, "Mom, I have to talk to you right now while I'm on my break." And so we talked about what it was that what struck him so much in that book. Which, can you share what it was that really pierced your soul?
the thing that pierced my soul is the fact that, I think, if I was going to break it down, is understanding perception and how we perceive others. Because when I say the value of a human soul, I mean, like, if you were to see a brick of gold, it's only valuable if you know it's valuable. And so when we see another human life, we only know it's valuable if we see it through the eyes of God. And so I think about the song Heaven's Eyes from Prince of Egypt, where it's like, you can only know like the value of life unless you look at it through heaven's eyes. And I feel like, without like coming from a necessarily religious perspective, To Kill a Mockingbird takes that idea and shows it over the course of the story, with like really impacting a person specific. Like, and for me, like, I was the person that it was impacting at the time, where I was able to see the value of a human soul through the eyes of something that is more than myself. And to me, that like To Kill a Mockingbird is a phenomenal book. Anybody should go read it. It seems like a normal book in the first part, like the first act or whatever, but by the time you get to like 2/3 of the way through, you understand the subliminal messaging, and that is like why the book is so impactful, because it's not so direct. It's not. So yeah.
I love it. Okay, last couple books that really impacted you, and then let's move on a little bit.
For me, I really enjoy psychology. Me and my brother talk about psychology and business a lot. My older brother, his name is James. I don't know if you guys have heard about him.
Yeah, they've heard about James.
Yeah, I love James. He's the best. And so I really enjoy like learning about psychology, specifically how people work. Excuse me. So I really enjoy learning about how people work because if you, because I was doing sales for a while and I'm still doing sales in like different capacities right now. And like when I was a producer, I had to call people. And so understanding how people operate has been very pivotal in like my life and is going to continue because of the direction I'm moving in. It's important to understand how people like operate. And so there's a few books that touch on without, it's not the purpose of the book, but they touch on it. And that's because I was already interested in that. I just gravitated to those concepts. Probably one of my favorite books is called Grit by Angela Duckworth, and I think we brought it up in the last podcast. But it talks about like motivation and what subliminally pushes somebody in a specific direction. And like in terms of like psychological concepts, the more that a person does something, the more that they're wired to do that thing in the future. And so like with grit specifically, one of the big concepts I picked up on is if you move forward in a direction, you are more likely to move forward in that direction in the future. And so if you want to have more grit, put more have more challenges. And so it's like if I wanted to go do a specific thing, like for example, if I was knocking doors for sales, it's like if I wanted to get better or have more grit or feel like if I wanted to be able to tell myself I'm the type of person to go above and beyond and knock like the extra 10 doors or whatever, that's something I can slowly, progressively do. And the more I do that, the more it becomes reinforced. So the reason I say that is because it's like the idea of psychology and the way that people operate is interesting to me. And so in books like Grit, I'm thinking like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's interesting because in all these this is like my own thought that's not tied to the books, but it's interesting because in all the personal development books that explain how to develop yourself, it like reverse engineers how the human mind works, because like you only understand like after the cool thing about reading this many books is I don't see things from that book's perspective anymore. I see things from the entire perspective of all of the books I've read. And so when I read a book now, and this is like subconscious, what happens is I see a concept and see how it ties to a million things. And what happens is I start to see how tactics are used to reverse engineer the mind, which is kind of like getting in the weeds. But I guess what I'm trying to say essentially is by having an expanded perspective, I understand the why behind how things operate. And so now I can go to a person, like most people actually, and I can start a conversation and I know how to act. I was talking to my friend about this, but I know how to act for them to be open emotionally to me as a person in most cases. And so through that, I can create and develop relationships. Because like if I use the ideas of grit, if I want to create friendships, all I have to do is talk to more people and gain those skills. And then by using like skills from how to win friends and influence people, by being genuinely interested in people, I get the opportunity to create deeper relationships that I wouldn't have otherwise had opportunities. So through all these books, it creates like its own ecosystem of like understanding and perspective. Where if I go read a book about economics, I can understand the way that people would take an economic policy and why that would turn sour because of the nature of humans. And so it's interesting to me because like I can go read a book about atomic habits and it's tied directly to the book Grit by Angela Duckworth, and I understand because of the connections I make between the books, I understand the way that I think and the way that people think subconsciously. And so then that, like I said, that's going into the weeds, and that's what's very interesting to me, and that's like a direction I want to move in. But the idea of reading all these books is it stops myself from having a singular perspective and opens my mind further without me even realizing it. But that's probably all the yap we need on that.
Thank you. Well, I loved it. Thank you, son. Okay, let's talk a little bit about your graduation and then your perspective and the books you read segueing into what you've chosen to do after now that you've graduated. So graduation, for those of you, I think it's really interesting because I've had a lot of, we did a graduation ceremony for Joshua at our house, and I got him a cap and gown. I actually bought one at Goodwill at a thrift store during Halloween last year, but then I totally forgot that my older son already had one, so I spent $5 for nothing. Woohoo! So I pulled out my other son's cap and gown, which was black, and I thought it was a little bit nicer than the bright blue one that I found at Goodwill. And I was able to order a tassel for him that said 25 on it, 2025. I was able to order a graduation, a diploma, thank you, a diploma. And in my state, once a child has fulfilled the necessary subjects that the state requires and the parents' determined way of teaching and curriculum, it's kind of loose, then the child can graduate. And I think they have to be 17, at least 17 as well. But so I was able to order a diploma for him. I could have just printed one out, but I wanted it to be beautiful and special, and so I did order one, and I can put the link to where I ordered that in the description.
I would pull it out. I don't have it right here, but it's really cool.
It is cool. It's beautiful, and it comes in a case, and you open it just like a regular diploma. And it didn't have to be mailed to us. I mean, it was mailed to us, but we didn't have to wait after our graduation for 3 weeks for it to come in the mail, right? I ordered it. It was there for the graduation. So what I've heard a lot of homeschooling moms are like, wow, I didn't even think that you could do a graduation for your child, which surprised me because I'm like, why would you not? One of the fears that I had was oh, my kids, not only Josh, but my other kids are going to miss out on things like prom, and they're going to miss out on graduation, and they're going to miss out on all these things. And the reality is Joshua went to 4 proms. Katie went to 1 prom this year, and I was able to do a graduation ceremony, and y'all, it ended up beautiful, and we had a lot more people show up than I anticipated to come to the ceremony. I sent out.
That was my job. That was kind of my fault.
No, it was, we sent out 100 graduation announcements.
And I sent out 50 texts.
And I printed them out. I had them printed at FedEx. I did the graduation announcement, and I said we're doing a private ceremony at this day at this time, and then afterwards we're doing a party, and it was a joint party with his friend who's graduating from public school, and I anticipated that people would come to the party after, because I said the graduation's at 6, the party will start at 6:30. So I was expecting people to come at 6:30, and a whole lot of people came. It ended up being standing room only, finally.
It was probably 50 people or
yeah,
so?
it was about 50 people is kind of what the estimate that I made after, give or take a couple of people.
Which for one person, that's pretty impressive.
That is impressive. And then we had a ton more people come at 6:30. So this is what we did. We started with the little. I wanted it to be short, but heartfelt. So my husband conducted, and then he had our daughter Kara, who's 9, give our family scripture, which is Proverbs 3:5-6, and then Katie read the poem "The Road Not Taken" by Robert Frost, of which she forgot to give the title and the author, but that's okay. And then I spoke for 5 minutes, and then Josh spoke for 5 minutes, and then we decided to knight him in Insult England. So he wasn't officially knighted, but we said rise up, and then I just put together a few words things that my husband said as he was knighting him, which we have a sword, thank you to Katie, who took a class and earned it through a Thomas Jefferson education class called the Sword of Freedom. Anyway, so she earned this real sword. So we used that sword, and so Joshua knelt down, and my husband knighted him and said, rise up, Joshua Daniels, become a man of honor and a man of God. And, we just put together something quickly. It wasn't It wasn't a lot. It like took like 20 seconds. And so then we announced him as our newest graduate, but our first homeschooling graduate. Everyone
First
clapped.
graduate, the valedictorian, and the worst in the class.
Right. He was the whole class. We had the whole class speak.
Every member.
Every member of the class spoke. It was awesome. All one of them. And then we said a closing prayer. His best friend who he was having the party with said the closing prayer. And then we ate, and we had delicious food. And I spent 2 days cooking because we did a taco bar that had lots of, it was really good, y'all. I wish you all could have come because it was so fun and so good. And people, what did you say, Josh?
There's a lot of guacamole and queso.
Lots of guacamole and queso, and thank you to Torchy's Tacos for the queso, even though it cost as much as buying all the meat myself. Anyway, but liquid gold, I'm telling you, Torchy's Tacos queso is liquid gold. So that was it, and we started at the ceremony at 6. The ceremony ended by 6:20, and then at 6:30, we started the party, and then after that, people came and went. And it turned out really, really beautiful. And a couple ladies came up to me. One was very teary-eyed, and she's like, this meant so much. Knowing Josh and watching him, grow has been such a beautiful experience, and we loved it. Another lady came up to me, and she's like, I just went to my granddaughter's graduation. It was 3 hours long. This was amazing. And heartfelt. And I loved it. And so that was we got lots of great feedback on doing a private ceremony. So if you're thinking like, oh, they'll miss out, do a private ceremony for them. Now, there are homeschool graduations people can go to.
I've heard those are not great.
Yeah, but they're like regular graduations because they're long. And let's be honest, nobody likes, we go to graduations to support our kids, but they last forever. So this was nice, short, sweet, and to the point. Again, I think we went too long at 18 minutes, and that was from start to finish. Next time, I think we'll try to shoot for 12 minutes. But anyway, so that was what we did for the graduation party, and it was very fun. And since we've got we hosted a grad party for another homeschool girl, not the ceremony, just the party, and then we've got a couple other girls we've got parties coming up for at our house as well. But the interesting thing is Katie said, Mom, what if my 3 closest friends and I did it together next year? And I said, that would be a possibility. I mean, why not? Keep it, if we did it, we'd still keep it at, 20 minutes tops. But that's a possibility. You can get together with other families and do it. If it's something that you can do within your state laws. I do have to clarify that because for us we could, it's within state laws. Okay, so now let's move on to how the books that you read shaped what you want to do next. The question is asked, Josh, are you going to go to college? And the answer is
no.
Because so for some of you, like, what? He's done it. He's been there. He could go back at some point, but let's talk about what you want to do next, Josh. And then,
I want to have a for real about college, though. College is not a waste of time or a waste of money if you're going for the right reasons. There's no reason for me to go that would validate me spending the effort to get scholarships or to spend the money to go to college.
And why is that? You have to say why.
It's because of the vocation I want to pursue, and I have been I've been very blessed with the opportunities in my life to where I don't need to.
Okay, so we're going to specify that specifically because the books that he read with personal development helped him realize what? What do you want to go into, Josh?
I want to go into personal development because that's the personality I have. Is I like working with people, and my favorite thing to have a for real moment with you guys for a second. My personal favorite thing, and the thing I think that God put me on the earth to do, and is a spiritual gift I feel like I have and have been readily able to use, is I can sit down and have a conversation for people and help them understand what their true motives are and help them move in that direction. A lot of people get caught up and miss the point of what they're doing because they get so busy, like subconsciously too. because there's so many things that are going on, and everybody's worried about relationships, or I'm sure for you, I don't know, but like I'm sure you guys have things that you're worried about in your marriage, or like with your kids, or like with your work, or with how things are going with education. And so sometimes I feel like people don't take the time to step back and actually look at where everything is and like reevaluate. And I feel like one of the gifts God gave me is I can sit down with somebody and help them reevaluate themselves and move in that direction. And there's a really great quote. I forget. I think it's from. It was something about hiring, but when you hire someone, I think it's from Alex Mosey from an email. But when you're hiring somebody, you don't want to find somebody that you can train to that you trained at that position. You want to find somebody that is already doing the position, like already has certain skills in that position, but they just don't know. Oh, it's Andrew Bustamante. He talked about this. He was like the difference between and he's talking about spy work, by the way. So to set the scene, because this can sound really weird, he was like, you can tell a trained liar versus an untrained liar based on like how they say certain things. And if they're a trained liar, the CIA knows how to find them because they already act a certain way. And so, in my opinion, it's the same with sales, with like HR, with like production and like operations. And so for me, I feel like I already have a lot of skill sets that I didn't know I was developing in terms of helping people discover their own problems and work through them. Not just in like personal life, but in business too. Like I've had a few close friends that I've helped like slowly move in direct, just to like having a conversation with them. And so those are things that I feel like I've already been blessed with. And so through opportunity, like what would be my education or my college would be taking this concept of personal development with the skills I already have and refining what I already can do and what my skills already are, and then adding to that. And so I think the direction, there's two things I'm doing. The thing I'm going to be doing after the next 2 years is I'll probably go get an internship with a company in personal development. Personally, I want to work with like either the Tony Robbins team or with the Stephen Covey team, even though he's passed away. They have a lot of programs that they have, and so I want to get an internship to understand like what that looks like. And actually, to me, if in a perfect world, if I could sit down and have conversations with people all day, every day, that would be a perfect world. I love physical labor, I love sales, I love all these things, but what I really love is helping people understand themselves further. And that is what I want to pursue, and that is like in all the training and all the education I get is going to push me towards that. And so, excuse me. And so, as long as I'm moving that direction, I think I'll be in a good place, and I think that's where God wants me. But for the next 2 years, the thing that's going to set me up for the rest of my life is I'm going to go serve a mission trip for my church for 2 years. I don't know where yet. We're finding out soon. But I'll get the opportunity to tell people about Jesus Christ, because to me, that is the most important thing in my life. The fundamental cornerstone. And this is my belief. And so if you're religious or not religious, this is just how I perceive it. I feel like God has put me on this earth to do this thing, is for me to choose Christ and for me to help other people choose Christ. That is the entire reason why I'm alive. That is the entire reason why I'm living. And if I was able to do that in my life, when I die, I know that I can die a fulfilled man. And for me, the next 2 years is going to be the perfect step in that direction, where I will get to be in the trenches teaching and talking and learning and sitting down and having these conversations with people, so that when I transition to my professional life, that I'll already be in a position that is helping me do that. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going to go through a mission trip.
And he's been working several jobs to.
I've worked 4 jobs. I've been building fences and decks, helping a law office shred like hundreds of pounds of paperwork. Takes a long time. I've done door-to-door window cleaning sales, and I still work at a restaurant, mainly for fun. I work at the restaurant 1 day a week because I get free pizza typically, and I get to spend time with my best friend, and I get to get
Who
out of
also works there.
I get to get out of the monotony of whatever I'm doing for the week. And so it's a very nice refresher. So I work at a restaurant. So I also have like a little bit of a small business that I do on the side, like cleaning trash cans. So I basically have 4 employers plus myself. So I have like 5 jobs basically. So because I have to pay for the mission trip and it's very expensive. Also, thank you to any of the listeners that have sent any graduation gifts. They're very much appreciated and are very much going towards my mission. So
Yes,
yeah.
because some of the listeners know us personally, and y'all have been very kind to Joshua. So, my friends, so that's it. This is our first graduate, and I'm excited for his life. I'm excited to see what he does in the future. I mean, I know it's going to happen in the immediate future, but long term, I've mentioned this before, we can do our best with our kids, but we don't get to pick what they ultimately end up picking. No matter how hard we try, we give our best, and then we turn everything else over to God, and he takes it from there. And then our children make their own choices because they're their own people. And anyway, y'all, you are doing better than you think you are. Life is good. You've got this, and we will talk next week.